Hello and welcome to the Penalty Box Perspective podcast. My name's Nathaniel and I am joined once again by my good friend Matt. How are you doing today?
Yeah, very good, Nathaniel. Very good, thank you. Yeah, how are you?
I am very good. I've just celebrated my first wedding anniversary, so that was a very, very
Woo!
nice weekend. Woo!
I
But I'm
can't
also
believe
ready to talk some hockey.
it's been a year since your wedding. Good times, great night.
Oh, absolutely. We went back to the same place as we went to before, as we were married at. And it was great to all the memories come flooding back, flooding back. Um, but back home, back at that fairy tale again, and back with the grind with hockey. Hey, um, but for today's episode, there's been a mini podcast here. We're gonna actually refresh our power rankings, which I think is actually a good, fun little exercise. Obviously, I got sick of seeing how where we had some teams, judging by how they performed this year. So I think it's a good time, the quarter point of the season, to get them refreshed. What do you think?
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I think as we've moved through the first quarter of the season, I think obviously some teams have, drastically overshot where we thought they were going to be. I think more so. I think it's more a case that I think a few teams have been really underwhelming. So we're going to have to sort of refresh some power rankings there and try and get the league a bit more lined up and squared up before the next 20-25 games happen and they all end up out of whack again. But yeah, these things happen all the time, don't they? I mean, I think before the season, you'll always expect that one team's going to perform a certain way, and there's always one team that completely flatters to deceive. But yeah, I'm looking forward to diving into these refreshed rankings at the quarter point.
Yeah, and I know I'm already trying to cover myself with this explanation, but what I like to do with these power rankings is not necessarily go from standings. Obviously, the standings go up and down, etc. But I think this is more about where I think these teams are sort of placed within, obviously, the cycle of their team. Are they rebuilding? Are they overachieving expectations? Even let's say they were maybe a bit below. Um, like they're above in the power rankings, but below in the standings. But I just feel like they're in a better position. Um, but yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
whether you've got anything you need to get off your chest before you announce your rankings.
No, I don't think so. No, I think it's
You standing
quite.
by them.
Yeah, I think so. We do have some similarities. I think certainly through the top end, and I think certainly through the back, the bottom end as well. And then I think, as always, kind of everything around the middle becomes a lot more open to interpretation. But as we did previously, Nathaniel's done his rankings 1 through 32. I've done my rankings 1 through 32, and we've kind of been able to aggregate them out in the middle to get their sort of overall penalty box perspective power ranking. So I'll let you kick us off.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the top four, even I think we are very set line by line, the exact same position. But I think a team that are miles above the rest, as clear as day. Number one in the power rankings is Colorado. I just think they've been an absolute machine this year. The best players, they're just the best team in hockey. I think that was fairly easy.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Easy pick, easy number one. They are leading the standings, but on top of that, they've got one regulation loss all year. They're just absolutely dominating teams, putting up points all over the place. They look absolutely lethal going forward. They're so solid defensively. They're getting great goaltending. And I don't think there's many people who wouldn't have Colorado as their cup favourites at the moment.
No, making me look very, very good. But they moved up from fifth to first overall, so we kind of half predicted where they were going to be. I think from pre-season. Uh, Now, obviously, one I'm eating my words on. We both ranked them as second in our rankings. Is the Dallas Stars? I think I'll let you lead off on Dallas because I don't want to contradict myself.
Yeah, well, I think we both maybe undersold the Stars at the start of the year. I think maybe we leaned a bit into the coaching change a bit too much. I had them previously ranked 10, you had them ranked 11. We've both got them ranked as second here. I think just what we're seeing is a really, really complete team. a team that's capable again of having some absolute star power going forward. They've got such depth throughout the team. They've got an elite goaltender in Jay Cottinger as well. And again, it had it not be for Colorado and how well they've played, I think we'd be getting such eyes on Dallas this year. But yeah, I know you're kind of needing to rescind a few previous words, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they're a good team, aren't they? I mean, they're a good squad. My main concern was how is the new coach going to come in and take over that locker room, and they've shown that they've done all right. Obviously, they're not anywhere near Colorado for me at this point, but when you look at the other teams, and I think they have their own flaws still. But then when we talk about the other teams, even in the few below, each team has their kind of sort of weak point and things like that. So I do think they deserve the second spot at this point. Do I think they're going to be deep in the playoffs? I still don't know, but right now I think they're definitely the second best team in hockey.
For sure, for sure. We also matched up on number 3 and number 4. Number 3 we had as Carolina. Again, just a really, really solid team who are just showing that they're really difficult to beat. Again, a deep squad. They're just yeah, they've really turned up this year, and they're performing really well. And I know you had them going quite a long way in our initial predictions, but yeah, they're certainly backing it up, aren't they?
Yeah, the reason why I got them below Dallas because I was thinking. I mean, my prediction at the start of the year was an Avalanche, Hurricanes, Stanley Cup, but I think the reason why Dallas will pip Carolina for me is just that sort of that firepower, the star power. They got the names. When they beat teams, they beat them convincingly. And Carolina, they seem to grind out victories. They're sort of a complete team, but they just lack the like the star power, if that makes sense, to really spark and dazzle. I think they're just a well coached and sort of great all round team.
I'd completely agree. Yeah, I think whilst they may not necessarily have they don't have a Nathan McKinnon or a Connor McDavid or anything like that, but what they have is a lineup full of kind of like B tier players. But they've
Yeah,
just got those up and down the line. I mean, they've got the likes of, Taylor Hall, who's been playing a lot on the fourth line. And okay, I appreciate that Taylor Hall isn't the Hart Trophy winner that he was a few years ago, but he is a former first overall pick, and he's a great guy to have in your bottom six, and they've just got a lot of depth of very good players. I really like the way they've put that roster together.
yeah, and I think obviously there are some players, the star players that are struggling. Ehlers isn't doing that well. They've had sort of their share of injuries and stuff as well. But I think, I mean, we talk about the third team here, so then we're trying to find a weakness to try and justify where we put them. But in fact, the third place is probably the best spot for them. Um, Now the fourth team, again, we share the same view. Obviously, recent results aside, but I think the Winnipeg Jets are a worthy fourth overall spot here in our power rankings. Again, similar to sort of Carolina, where they're just solid on all levels, really, and they're just in a tough division.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's I think the fact that 3 of our top 4 teams all play within the same division goes to show how strong that Central Division is. We talk about it every single week about it being the best division in hockey, and I think it is far and away that at the moment. But yeah, you look at the Jets, obviously the President's Trophy winners last year. They're following it up with another good year this year. They've had a few kind of shaky results here and there, but again, just such a deep lineup, especially with them getting Adam Lowry back recently as well. And you've got Jonathan Taves down there as well on in your bottom 6 as well. And Shifley's having a great year. Kyle Connor's having a great year. They're great going forward. They're great in defense. Obviously, I know Connor Hellebuck's hurt at the moment, but you've got an undeniable elite goaltender there as well when he is healthy. So yeah, they are it's so unfortunate that they're in the division that they're in. Otherwise, they'd be running away with it if they were in other divisions.
Yeah. Um, right. Well, we'll sort of block into sort of the next block of four teams, really. Now, for me, really, I think those top four teams are pretty set. They are the best of the best in the league this year. And when you got like 1A teams, these are kind of like I would suggest maybe the 1B teams. So they got potential for me to get to the Stanley Cup if they go on a run, etc. But they're not going to be the front runners. I don't know whether you agree with that sentiment before I announce who these teams are.
No, I would agree with that entirely. I think your top four are very much locked in and are kind of bona fide contenders. These next four are playoff teams in my opinion, and very capable of winning a round or two. Very capable if the chips fall their way. They could find themselves in the finals. They could find themselves in contention for a Stanley Cup. Just maybe not necessarily to the same extent that the previous four are. But yeah, I'll let you kind of lead off with this next block.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know how best to do this, but I'm gonna name the four teams, right? And then we're gonna discuss where we've placed them and why, and then obviously our joint rankings. I think that's the best way to do it.
Hmm.
But we have the New Jersey Devils, the Vegas Golden Knights, the Anaheim Ducks, and the Montreal Canadiens. And I've read that out in a list of where I've ranked them. But I don't know why. That's just how I've done it. I should have done it the other way around. So actually, the our rankings in fifth we have Vegas Golden Knights, the sixth the New Jersey Devils, seventh Canadians, and eighth the Ducks.
Mhm.
So why do you think Vegas? Let's go for because they're the one in fifth. Why do you think they're fifth over the rest?
I think they are right on the precipice between this 1B tier and that 1A tier. I think that they are sort of the best team of these four. They've got the experience. They've got some unbelievable players, and we saw when they started the year they were an absolute wrecking ball at the start of the season. They have just kind of cooled off slightly and sort of stumbled their way around a few results, but we know what that team is capable of doing. We know what the organization is all about in terms of their commitment to winning, and they've just got such a well assembled roster. They just kind of need to figure out their goaltending issues, and that for me is kind of the difference between them being up there with those other four. So I have them fifth. I know you have them sixth, so we've aggregated them out at fifth. But yeah, that's why they're there for me.
And I'm inclined to agree as well. I mean, I had them sixth, so I only had the Devils ahead of them. But obviously, I think a big injury sort of impacted that sort of decision making. So I think maybe fifth is the best place for the Golden Knights. For me, they've just been a bit uninspiring. They're in sort of a weaker division, and they're going up against matchups where they need to show a certain dominance, and they're not doing it as opposed to the other ones. But yeah, I'm not going to argue too much about them being in fifth place. If I'm honest, I think that they're going to be in the playoffs and they're going to go far. I still think. So in sixth place, then it actually falls as the New Jersey Devils. So I had them fifth, and you had them in eighth position. So I think the big hook on the Devils is the injury to Jack Hughes. Am I wrong?
Um, the injury to Jack Hughes and just the fragility of the team as a whole. I think the Devils are a good team, well, a very, very good team when everything's going right and everyone's healthy and everything's clicking. But just the way that team is, um, they're just not. They're just not consistent enough in that regard. They can't keep everyone healthy for a prolonged period of time. And that just will kind of slow them up. And we're already seeing that injury to Jack Hughes have some real sort of negative impact on the team as a whole. Obviously, he's their franchise player, but yeah, they're just a bit too fragile for me. And I don't know, when it all goes well, they're great, but that's why I kind of had them down in eighth for me. I'm quite interested to see sort of why you had them in fifth, particularly over Vegas there.
Yeah, I just think when you look at that sort of fragility of the team and sort of the explosiveness of the plays that they do perform, and just with with the rankings, I think Vegas they've got the tools, but they're not performing. Whereas the Devils, they are performing, even though they don't necessarily have all the tools available. If that makes sense. So when I see like they're able to pull together a more competitive performance sometimes than maybe the tools will allow, which is why I think they're sort of maybe a better overall team. I don't. Do I think there's a big clear difference? No. I think they are within sort of the top six teams for me. The Devils and Vegas. With the top four, they're more inclined for me to be closer to the to the top four than from the next group of teams we'll talk about in due course. But yeah, that's essentially a basis for that. I think
Yeah,
they're going to. Yeah,
I don't disagree with that at all. And I think that they do find a way of keeping themselves competitive and battling through, even when they are kind of a bit broken down. But yeah, just for me, I just don't think they have the. I just don't trust them enough.
yeah.
But yeah, there isn't. Again, we're talking about fifth and sixth here, so it's fine margins, fine margins.
It is fine margins, and no doubt the bias comes into it. I don't like Vegas. I don't like what they're about. Whereas I quite like watching the Devils and their games. That they're fun to watch. So I think that's probably falls into it as well, no doubt. Um, I'm not for a minute going to say I provide an unbiased view on the sport, but yeah. Um, the next two teams then. Um, we got seventh in our power rankings, the Montreal Canadiens. And I want to tie these in with the eighth place team, the Anaheim Ducks, purely because they're the sort of the young guns, up and comers, the non-playoff teams from last year, so who are going to be breaking through and like they're on fire, if that makes sense. So, yeah, why the Canadians over the Ducks?
I just think that as far as the rebuilding teams go in the league, and there have been a few over the last few years, I just think the Canadians are a step ahead of where the Ducks are at the moment. Don't get me wrong, I think the Ducks have performed really, really well this year, and I think they are. Well, I think them and the Canadians are maybe even performing better than we expected, and maybe that is a byproduct of some of the larger teams not performing as well this year. But I think that what we're seeing with the Canadians is they've, those that great crop of young players that they've had are all sort of reaching that maturity, and they're still able to reload the team with really good young players. You're having, Suzuki and Caulfield and these really sort of exciting players. They've gone and added Noah Dobson, and they've got some really good sort of young veteran presence. And then they just go and chuck like Ivan Demidov and Lane Hudson in there on top of it all. And I just think that the roster they've assembled is going to be competitive for such a long time. And I think they've just taken a massive leap this year and more or less a leap sort of right into their contention window. I do think the Ducks are getting there. I just think that they're kind of where the Canadians were maybe last year. Um, yeah, I just think the Canadians are just half a step ahead of where the Ducks are at the moment.
Interesting. I see it the other way, where yeah, absolutely, I completely agree with the fact that the Canadians are the young, exciting team. They've got the solid foundation if they can keep all their players on the sort of low level contracts and a few Ducks see some extra dollars elsewhere and shoot off. But I just think the Ducks that they've got the sort of right composition of a roster right now to be the better team right now. They
Mm.
got some of the older players like Chris Kreider, for example, coming in. They got Gudis and these sort of I guess a more rounded squad right now for like when you get into you playing the same team 7 times in a row in the playoffs. That they've got the experience there to push them along. So for me, that's why I had the Ducks over the Canadians. As it shakes out, the Ducks are blowing the power rankings, but I think these two teams are fascinating. The young, it is fresh, and I
They
think
are,
that's what's
yeah,
great every year.
they are two of the most exciting teams in the league for me. Really, really enjoy watching them whenever they're on. So yeah, I love the both of them. I think they're great.
Yeah. So a couple of more easier picks in the next two because we both had them in the exact same spots. Um, we have the Lightning in ninth and the Penguins in 10th. So I guess why the Lightning over the Penguins?
I just think you've got the track record there. You've got the. I think Pittsburgh have drastically overshot where we thought they were going to be this year. We even did a whole episode on what a Penguins rebuild's going to look like and how they can do that this year. They've gone and completely cast that aside and they're remaining competitive. I just think there's a way more capacity for the Penguins to just completely fall off a cliff. I just think you look at that Lightning team, whilst okay, they're not necessarily, that they're maybe having some slight consistency issues and they're maybe not getting the production they would like from the likes of, Kucherov and etc. I just think that you look at that Lightning team, they've been there, they've done it. They've got that veteran presence. They've got those big marquee players. They've got a coach in John Cooper who knows how to get them across the line. And then I just think, you know, the the Penguins are riding a wave that they could come off at any point.
I don't think I could summarise that any better. Um, I think Penguins are the biggest risers, but also could be the biggest fallers again next time we come back and do this. Obviously, they're high because we go off with this is what we've seen. If they maintain it, then they absolutely deserve to be in the position they're in. But I do think the Lightning are a better squad, easily. I think this is where a line for me is kind of drawn between the good teams and the okay teams.
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah, completely agree. I think the kind of the Lightning represents for me in that ninth position, the sort of last of the this team could really have a shot at winning the cup this year. I think everyone kind of from here downwards, I think it's a lot more dicey.
Yeah, and it's also where it starts getting to a pot of where we agree and don't agree, and here, there, and everywhere. So we're looking at the 11th team here in our power rankings, and we've gone for the LA Kings, which is exactly where you've put them. And I had them in 12th, so no great shakes there. I think for me that they're just the epitome of the 11th team.
Yeah,
uh, they're solid. They're
yeah,
just solid, aren't they?
yeah. I think the Kings will make the playoffs. I think they'll be in there. I just, I just think that they're a prime kind of like getting bounced in the first round kind of candidate potentially. But they're very solid. They are tough to beat. They are physical. Um, and the kind of brand of hockey they play allows them to, they don't concede tons of goals. They don't score hatfuls of goals either. But they're just like they're quite a gritty team and sort of capable of upsetting teams on the best of nights.
Yeah. Uh, I guess kind of like in some respects is the Boston Bruins, who I think have taken everyone again by surprise, kind of like the Penguins, they were close to the bottom, well, they were bottom, the Bruins, weren't they, last year? And they've been performing sort of above expectations this year. So they find themselves in a 12 power ranking spot. I had them 11th and you had them 13th, so bang in the middle, 12th. Perfect.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that again there isn't kind of a massive difference between me having them 13th and you having them 11th. I think they have been vastly improved, but from what we saw last year, and I think that Geeky's been a prime example of that. He's just on a rich vein of goal scoring form at the moment. Um, but I think what we're seeing from Boston is just like a little bit more of that fight back in them. I think last year, I think they were too easy to just have roll over and just sort of not compete night to night. Whilst we're just seeing a little bit more fight in them on a nightly basis, and it's showing, and they're finding a way to claw their way through results and work their way back up the power rankings.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it comes down to that Atlantic division. It's all to play for, I think. There's quite a few teams we'll talk about where they uh, nobody seems to know what they're doing. But
Agreed.
now it's time for you to act all smug. Go on.
um, yeah, so we had the Chicago Blackhawks ranked 13th. Now, I know some people may think that's maybe somewhat high, especially kind of off of the week they've just gone off of at the time of recording. But my what I'm about to say is caveated by let's ignore that singular game against Buffalo because that's just a complete outlier. But in every game this season, barring that Buffalo game, they have found a way. This young Blackhawks team, they have found a way to be in every single game. They've been competitive when they've been beaten. It's been close. We've also seen from Connor Bedard this year his ascension into being one of the most dominant players in the league so far this season. He's one of only 4 players to have over 30 points so far. And now we're seeing the Connor Bedard that was the undeniable number one pick. And I think this is a really keen lesson on why you don't go to write off prospects so quickly. People already in the end of his second year, talking about him being a bust and all that sort of thing. But I think what you've done this year is Chicago have put some young, hungry, high skilled players up there to play with him. So it's not just been Connor Bedard and a bunch of veterans who are potentially going to get traded or get moved around or not get re-signed or whatever. All these pieces that have been brought through. You're seeing this next generation of the Chicago Blackhawks all coming through together at the same time. You're seeing Artem Levshinov and Sam Rinzel kind of brought in this year. You're seeing a full season of Frank Nazar and Oliver Moore's come up from the AHL recently, and he's been electric and just they're in every single game. And they do have the capacity to fall down these rankings a little bit, but I just think what we're seeing at the moment from them is a team that everyone expected to be around the bottom of the league this year, and they've turned an awful lot of heads this season.
Yeah. And the reason I rank them so high, because before people get on Matt's back for having him so high, I also had them high up as well. For me, it comes down to a level of frustration factor. And when we're going to be talking about the teams that follow this, each team has its own frustrations that they stifle themselves. Whereas with the Blackhawks, at the moment there is no sort of frustration. They're thereabouts in the standings. That they're not lagging behind. They're not jumping ahead, etc. They're in the mix with all these teams. But when you watch a Blackhawks game, you're seeing that potential there, and you're not getting frustrated with it.
No, yeah,
Personally, obviously,
exactly.
if you um, maybe that's just because of the progress they've made from last year, but then there are other teams who've shot up the rankings as well in this sort of cluster where you still don't have the same feelings. I guess it comes down to the point where they're not in these other teams aren't always in every game, whereas the Blackhawks are. So I think it's incredible how they've turned it around. The fact Bedard's showing himself to be the player everyone wants him to be for the most part. I'm sure there are people who love to hate on Bedard and want to watch him suck, but he doesn't. And I think that's a big thing in comparison to these other teams where that you have a young franchise superstar that's going to be on the cover of the NHL games and of the league, really.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, I'm really excited, for every single Blackhawks game that rolls around, and I can't necessarily say that that's been the case for the last 2 to 3 years. Um, so yeah, I'm really happy with where they're at right now.
Yeah. Now we have a cluster of teams who are, for me, like the fringe potential playoff wildcard teams who may or may not sort of get in, but they're going to be around at the end and probably going to frustrate a lot of people. Um, we both had the Detroit Red Wings in 14th spot. So they're in the 14th spot of our power rankings, which I think will be a pleasant surprise for Detroit fans following from the past few years of sort of mediocre hockey. They seem to have taken a step forward, which is good. But will they make an impact? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I think that Detroit obviously they've spent so many years, sorry, just being mid, and what we're now seeing is a Detroit team that they're, you know, all the arrows pointing up in the right direction, and again they've blooded in some new, young, exciting, hungry players. And I think this is kind of a lesson as you're seeing up and down the league is, you know, with the speed that the game is played at nowadays, it's becoming, you know, the teams that are bringing in all these younger players are the teams that are having more success. You know, you look at the Canadians, you look at the Ducks, you look at the Blackhawks and the Red Wings, and I know there's a couple of other teams that you know that we're going to touch on in terms of their kind of young talent. Um, but I think everything's moving up in the right direction for the Red Wings. I think they have the capacity to sneak their way into the playoffs this year. Um, what they are able to do there, if they make it, is yet to be seen. But yeah, I think slightly more positive for Detroit this season than they were maybe expecting.
Well, these next two teams for me are closely matched, but they're two different examples of the same thing, where they'll win their fair share of games, but they're not going to make any great shakes in the league. But you got them probably the most boring team in the Seattle Kraken in 15th spot, and probably the wildest team at the minute, the Ottawa Senators in 16th. Now, I think for me, I put the Kraken ahead of the Senators purely because they're a bit more sort of stable. You know what you're going to get, and that's always good for projections and things like that rather than the Senators. But yeah, what are your thoughts on those two teams?
Well, coincidentally, I actually had the Senators above the Kraken for the reason of I just think they're so rogue in the way they play that I think they are, you know, they are capable of more in an upset fashion. Um, yes, okay, they are capable of kind of getting walloped every now and then, but yeah, they are both kind of you know win two lose one kind of teams seemingly, and
They're three for three kind of a way.
well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they are prime 3 points in 3 games, kind of 500 teams. But I just think that the Senators do it in a bit more of an exciting fashion than the Kraken do. Um, yeah, I just think the Kraken are they are up there with one of the most sort of unappealing teams to watch in the National Hockey League. In my opinion.
And that's their frustration. Yeah, that's their frustration. That's what we're talking about. The Red Wings, I just feel like they're going to, no doubt, fall off a cliff somehow and end up back where they always are. The Kraken are just boring. Senators are frustrating because you can see the quality and the fire, and then sometimes they don't sort of meet that level. So which is why further reason as to why the Blackhawks are above these teams, I think.
Mm.
Um,
Go on
but
then, Nathaniel. This next one's on
interesting,
you. This next one's on you.
yeah. The Minnesota Wild in 17th spot in our power rankings. I don't know what to think of my own team, and that's the weird thing. I mean, going off recent results, they're on a bit of a run now, but they also had a run where they played absolutely horrendous. I just don't trust this team to sort of really push on and show that they belong where I want them to be, especially in that tough Central Division. So you got Blackhawks as well that are on the up. That they're saved by a couple of eggs that are also in the division. But I just think they're just prone to not producing what they should be doing at the right times. And they got, in terms of roster building, I don't think they've got a well-rounded roster. I think they're relying a lot on sort of third line scoring sometimes that just isn't there when the top lines are stifled, and obviously injuries as well. Injuries have hit. We've lost 3 out of our 4 starting centres, um, which doesn't help either.
Yeah, and they've been so up and down, haven't they? And I think that if we'd maybe done this, these power rankings a few weeks ago, I think they would have found themselves a bit lower down because they had a somewhat catastrophic start to the season. Um, we are we have seen in patches what they are capable of doing. When it all clicks. And I think especially I think Minnesota this year, they have a lot to be thankful for with their goaltending duo. I do think they've got one of the best goaltending tandems, in the league. And I think that will put them in a position where they can win games that they kind of have no business winning. Um, but I think that they have the players to make a big dent and to make a good push. They just they just haven't quite
Coaching
figured
for
it
me.
out yet.
I think coaching wise, and look, I don't mind John Hines as a coach, but he's a great wild card team coach for me. I don't think he's going to push us to the levels of the other teams, like the Winnipeg, Dallas, Colorado, that those sort of levels. We're not going to get to that point with John Hines, and therefore they're always going to be stunted. Um, but I mean, they are 17th, so it could be worse.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they've got every shot at making the playoffs. Maybe, obviously, with it being in the Central Division, it will probably have to be through a wild card spot. But yeah, I think they're capable of doing it.
Yeah. Now, a consensus pick for this one, the 18th Spot Power Rankings, the Utah Mammoth. Don't really know what much more to say about it. They started the season hot, but then they've come back down to sort of earth a little bit. They are who they are. They're good, but not great team. And I think they're still within the same bunch as what teams we've just talked about. But then that's about it.
Yeah, and I do think this team is a lot better off for being in Utah than they would have been in Arizona. So in that regard, I think the franchise is in a better place. I think they're in a position now where they are looking to contend and they are looking to actively improve and do better. Um, yeah, I just think there may be a kind of a couple of pieces shy, or they are a couple of their good players stepping up to being great players. If that makes sense. So very much a couple of their players have the potential to be sort of all-star caliber guys. We just haven't seen it yet. But they are certainly in a much better place off now they've relocated. But I think they are kind of what they are at the moment until either the players step up or they make some changes.
Yeah. They're making progress, I think. Definite progress.
Yeah, just
Um,
slowly.
yeah. Now, these next three teams, I think, it's a very, very interesting conversation. They're all on sort of an island by themselves. That they are the perennial decent teams from the past few years who are just having rough seasons. I'm interested to know why you've sort of ordered them in the way that you've ordered them. But the Edmonton Oilers, Toronto Maple Leafs, Florida Panthers.
Yeah. These three teams, I think, piss me off more than any teams in the league. Just in terms of like, I now I have sympathy for Florida. I have sympathy for Florida because they are beaten up at this stage, but the Florida Panthers are they've won back-to-back Stanley Cups, so that's kind of always something that you need to caveat whenever we kind of like bag on them a little bit, or if they're playing poorly and we're kind of like, what are they doing? It's like, yeah, but they've won the cup twice in the last 2 years. So it's there. I think if anyone's earned a year to just suck, it's probably them. I've got the Oilers ahead of the Maple Leafs for the pure factor of having Connor McDavid. And it pretty much is as simple as that. Having a guy of his caliber who is able to win a game single-handedly on his own is what separates him for me from the likes of the Maple Leafs, who in theory should have that with someone like Austin Matthews, but we just haven't seen it as much this year. And obviously, I know he's kind of a bit injured, and they haven't quite kind of managed to figure it out. But yeah, that's kind of what separates it for the Oilers for me. Just the Oilers goaltending is just a shit show. And just, I'm sure if Conor
It's just
McDavid could
horrendous.
strap on a set of pads and a glove, I'm sure he would give it a go, and I'm sure he would quite fancy taking the puck all the way up the ice and scoring himself. But yeah, these three teams are all rough at the moment.
They're all rough, and I'm like, part of me thinks, and part of me wants them to not make the playoffs this year, just to see the carnage in each of those big markets.
Oh yeah,
Obviously,
it's going to be an absolute
just to
meltdown,
feel,
isn't it?
because they're not going to be bad enough to get any sort of decent draft picks. Maybe, well, maybe in the lottery, but not a chance to get first overall pick. Oh, God, imagine if one of these teams got Gavin McKenna. But um, I just think they're just highly frustrating teams having a poor seasons all round, and they need to get their acts together. I think 2 out of the 3 will turn it around and make the playoffs, and I think one will drop out. But interesting, a different little microclimate there in the middle of our
Yeah,
power rankings.
yeah, and if it was any of those three teams, I think the stakes of the Oilers and Maple Leafs not making the playoffs, I think, is significantly higher. I think if the Panthers decided that, you know what, we're going to write this year off, and what we're going to focus on is getting everybody back healthy, trying to avoid losing anyone else, and just getting everyone rejuvenated, maybe give some of the peripheral guys a bit more of a look and kind of almost take a year off. I don't think you'd find a single Florida Panthers fan who would be upset with that. Because again, they've had the recent success to almost earn that free pass. I just think that if
But
the
people
Oilers
get
and the
used to certain levels.
they do, and I do get that, and I get that there is a landscape in the present day with sports fans where they want everything now, and if the Panthers miss the playoffs, there might be the odd one going, we need to sack the coach, we need to, this team needs to be torn down and restart, what a bunch of kind of chokers, etc. It's like, yeah, but just look at what you have had. Whilst I just think that the potential of the Oilers and the Maple Leafs not making the playoffs with the rosters they have is borderline unthinkable, really. You could just see the potential of Toronto going up in flames if that didn't happen, and there'd just be riots in the streets. And yeah, I just think that there's of those three teams, if two of them were to make a Hail Mary push for the playoffs, I think it would be those two, just because I think they've got a lot more to lose.
Yeah, and yeah, I'd agree. I think, but it's definitely a storyline in and of itself to keep an eye on as we go through the season.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, Now, the sort of next group of teams in his power rankings is pretty much the Metro Division.
Mid.
Um, just midropolitan. How many times can we try to fit mid into a term in this league? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think we'll fight through. I think the better ones out of these teams, I think, are the Blue Jackets in 22nd in our power rankings, shortly followed up by the Islanders in 23rd. They were sort of a unanimous pick for us too. I don't know if we need to deep dive these sort of teams now at the bottom in this sort of purgatory land. I just think they're solid, not going to make the playoffs, and they're sort of youngish rosters that no real signs of making great leaps anytime soon for me.
Yeah, I mean, there is, we could bunch, would you say, 6 or 7 of these teams together? I am juggling my hands as I do that, by the way. 6, 7. Sorry about that.
Shut up. Shut up.
They are.
The
Yeah,
gods celebrating. The gods
oh,
celebrating.
stop it. Yeah, so look, you've got the Blue Jackets, the Islanders, the Rangers. You've got the Flyers, the Canucks, and the Capitals in there as well. They're all teams that have they have bright nights where they put it together, but all in all, they've been a combination of disappointing and this team's kind of building at the moment. The Blue Jackets and the Islanders, I think the reason why we kind of have them at the top of this stack is you can see the arrow pointing the right way with them. You look at the Islanders. They've obviously we've seen what we've seen from Matty Schaefer this year. The Blue Jackets have. They've got Marchenko, they've got Voronkov, Fantilli, they've got these guys that are potentially going to look at pushing that franchise in the right direction. Whilst, and I suppose you can maybe kind of put the Flyers in with that as well. I think, especially with the Rangers, the Canucks, and the Capitals as well. I just think that the arrow's kind of on the downspin now, and especially with the Rangers, which they have been so disappointing this year, and such an enigma with the whole kind of home curse. And I just think you've got some players in that roster who are all-star caliber players, the likes of Igor Shesterkin and Adam Fox and Artemi Panarin and guys like that, and they're just not. They're just kind of flattering to deceive, and just been poor, really poor. But I just think with all these teams, in kind of summary, really, they're not going to make a push for the playoffs. They're kind of sat in this purgatory. I think there'll be some coaching changes, maybe bashed around a few of these teams, maybe some guys sold off, maybe some trades for some draft picks. But this year, it's kind of a bit of a write-off for them.
Yeah, I think so too. It's just not. Yeah, none of them are inspirational. They're just sort of filler teams in a lot of respects. And I mean, you got to have poor teams to have good teams. But yeah, I don't see any of them making a bigger push. I think you've rounded that off quite nicely for me.
Yeah,
So just to recap, we've got the Blue Jackets in 22nd, the Islanders in 23rd, the Rangers in 24th, the Flyers in 25th, Canucks in 26th, Capitals in 27th. Surprised with the Capitals. I thought they might have been a bit higher up, but that's where we've put them, really.
yeah. I think we all
So,
thought they'd maybe have a slightly better year than what they've had, but they've just laid a bit of an egg.
yeah. And then sort of a team by itself in these rankings, because I think they're better than the bottom four teams, but they're not quite in that same metropolitan type level. But it's the San Jose Sharks in 28th. I think they've made some surprises. I think they're a team on the up, and as we keep saying, I think next year might be a bigger increase. But you've seen Celebrini step up, Eklund step up, Smith step up. I just think they need a bit more rounded on their roster before they make a significant push.
Yeah. And I think, when we talk about arrows pointing up or pointing down, etc., that, there is a slight, to what extent is that arrow pointing up? And I think for the Sharks, it's looking pretty good. We say it week after week with, what we're seeing from the Sharks this year is, a bunch of young guys stepping up and performing. And we're seeing it from Celebrini and Smith and Eklund, and I've been really impressed with Askarov in goal recently as well. I think he's been terrific, and Sam Dickinson's looked quite good on the defense as well, and I know Michael Meese has played a few games as well, and looked quite good. I think we looked at the Sharks at the start of the season. They brought in a whole bunch of veterans. We thought, oh God, like that, this has the capacity to be a bit of a disaster. But the Sharks are in a position where we're not even really talking about any of the veterans. We're talking solely about the young players because they have performed that well. Don't get me wrong; they're still, they're not a playoff team. They are still a couple of years behind the likes of the Canadians and the Ducks, and I would even say kind of a year behind where the Blackhawks are at the moment. But they will certainly be up there. And, when we revisit this 12 months down the line, we could be talking about a completely different team.
Absolutely, and I think the facts they were deeply rooted at the bottom of our power rankings in pre-season. So the fact that they've made that step up and moved up, I think, is good for them because they were way behind everybody else. I think.
Yeah, completely,
Um,
completely. But our final four teams is a little bit depressing.
dumpster fire of yeah, oh God, I would choose not to watch any of these games for the most part. There's a two of these teams may surprise another team every now and then, but they're just not very good. So in 29th we got the Blues, then the 30th we got the Predators, the 31st we got the Sabres, and then we've still, well not still, but at the bottom we have the Calgary Flames. Yeah, the McKenna sweepstakes, McKenna race is purely on between these teams.
Yeah. Um, yeah, these guys are all really, really painful to watch. And, it's tough, isn't it? Because obviously teams get number one draft picks because they're bad. And that's fine. And we can accept that. I just think you look at three of those markets for someone like Gavin McKenna. I think you look at St. Louis and you look at Nashville and you especially look at Buffalo and you just think like that is going to be incredibly miserable if he ends up going there. Now, if he goes to, if he gets, if he happens to land in Calgary and you've got a young Canadian superstar going to a team like the Flames, I can see that working out quite well. And they do have sort of, you look at the Flames and they've got Dustin Wolf, they've got Zane Perek, they've got a couple of guys who you can see somewhat of a future there, but I think especially the Sabres and the Predators are just really, really miserable teams to watch. Really miserable.
Yeah, we can't add that, and I think I I quite like the Calgary Flames as a team in general. Though I don't want them to be bad at any point. I think now I'm going to be rooting for them to get McKenna because I think the McKenna McDavid battle in the Mc battle in Alberta
Yeah.
um, will be, would be a good storyline for the length of time it takes for McDavid to go to somewhere else. But yeah, all these teams are just awful, not going anywhere. Yeah, not much to say about that. I think we'll leave it at that. I don't know if you got anything more you want to say about them.
Well, I was just going to quickly quiz you. We, without looking at our notes, if you can, there are two teams in these 32 that have not moved a single spot. Do you happen to know which two teams are in the same space now as they were at the start of the season?
Oh, so on that basis, what teams do I think have performed exactly how I expected them to perform? So
Yeah,
I think I'm gonna go the LA Kings
incorrect.
because they'll be thereabouts. Incorrect.
Incorrect.
Oh, fair dues. I'm gonna go Lightning. I'm gonna go Predators.
You're wrong on both of those. So, our two non movers
Great.
are the 25th spot Philadelphia Flyers, have stayed exactly where we thought that, well, exactly where they are, which I don't really have any complaints about, really. I think kind of the Flyers are kind of what we expected them to be.
I should have
And
took a flyer and guessed them, shouldn't I?
and the only other non-moving team is our 31st ranked Buffalo Sabres. They have been as disastrous as we expected.
Yeah, but not bad enough to be bottom, but
No.
just that annoying last bottom spot.
Yeah. Yeah. But other than that, every other team has at least moved somewhere. But
Somewhere.
Yeah, no, I think I'm a lot happier now with where our teams sit for when we go by our weekly show and we have a look at where each team's kind of ranked as far as we look at them, and I think we'll be looking at kind of re-reviewing this around the 45 game mark or potentially when we break for the Olympics or something like that. Um, but yeah, is there anything further from yourself?
No, I don't think so. It's always a fun exercise, is trying to rank things and trying to get your head around it. But yeah, it was annoying me seeing sort of the Penguins like really far down the list when we're talking about them being in third spot in the division.
Yeah.
So it's good time to get them refreshed, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. Cool. Well, as always, guys, you can find us on both X and Instagram at the PBP Podcast. You can get in touch with us as well at penaltyboxperspective at gmail.com. If you've got any questions, queries, feedback, or anything else you want to provide to us for the show. Um, in addition to that, you can now listen to the podcast in audio on YouTube as well. If you want to go and like and subscribe over there as well. If you have it in your heart, especially as we approach the festive season, if you want to gift us a 5-star review, then you can do that on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. Would mean a lot to us. Really helps us kind of move our way up the algorithm and into the into the space of other potential listeners, and that would be fantastic for us. But no, as always, guys, thank you very much for being with us and for being on the ride.
Yeah. Take care. We'll see you next time. Bye.